CASA, which stands for Court-Appointed Special Advocates, is a nonprofit organization here in Harford County that recruits and trains members of the community to be advocates for children in foster care. There are hundreds of children in foster care. They have a voice. That voice needs to be heard, and you can be the person to make sure that that voice is heard. In the next half an hour, we're going to meet the volunteers, talk to the executive director, and hear about the many ways that CASA advocates for children in our community, how businesses and local community members can get involved, and what their plans are for the future. I'm Christy Breslin, and this is Harford MagaScene. Ross Eduardo is the executive director here at CASA of Harford County. He's been the longtime executive director, and he really puts his heart and soul into helping the foster children in need here in our Harford County community. Ross joins us to tell us all about this wonderful program and how you can help or maybe get involved yourself. Hi, Ross.
Hi.
Now, Ross, we have known each other for a very long time. How long have you been the executive director, and what really inspired you personally to become involved with CASA?
This August, it'll actually be 20 years that I've been with CASA of Harford County. Most of my career has been working with children in the child welfare type fields. I've worked with children in foster care settings, in group home settings, but CASA is really just a totally different way to serve the same population. I love being able to supervise volunteers and train the volunteers, and there's just something very different and unique about the CASA role that it's just something that I've really loved for the last 20 years.
So what is the mission of CASA?
Our mission is to serve every child that we can with an individual advocate who can walk with them through the foster care system and be there as they make their way through that maze of the whole foster care process and be that consistent adult for them through it.
What do you see as the greatest challenge right now for families and children in the child welfare system?
Definitely lack of resources. The foster care system just does not have the financial resources that it needs to take care of the kids that they serve. A lot of programs have been cut over the years that if they were still in place, families might not need to have their child go into foster care. So a lot of preventative services have kept people from being able to keep their children at home just because of some of the struggles that are out there. And it's very easy for people to want to question the foster care system and the social work and why are they not doing this or that, but there isn't the funding that they need to do all the work that they need to do.
Well, obviously you can't tackle these challenges alone. So what does successful collaboration look like when CASA, social workers, attorney, foster parents, when everybody comes together on behalf of a child?
Yeah, it's so important. We all have kind of our different lanes that we're in, the social workers, attorneys, the education system. But I think if we could all put aside what our personal lanes are and just remember that there's a child in the middle of it and that everything that we do needs to be for that child's best interest, I think that when we can work together as a team, it just gives better outcomes for kids. And I will say Harford County, I think, does a tremendous job of all of the different agencies that work together for children in the foster care system. I think we do a great job of it, and I think it's just so necessary because no one organization can do everything.
The more help, the better. So what are some of the ways that businesses, faith communities, civic groups, what are ways that they can get involved and really help move this mission of CASA forward?
There's so many different ways. I mean, the easy answer for any nonprofit is to always say donate, donate your money. And obviously that's always a need, but I think the other thing is that we need the word spread about the need for more CASA volunteers, and we need the word spread about the needs of children that are in foster care. So anytime that a business or a church can talk to their respective organizations about, hey, are there people here that would like to do this kind of work? And we'll support you in it. You know, there are a lot of companies that will support volunteer work. So for people to help support their employees if they want to do this kind of work, be available for court hearings, things like that. And the same thing with, I think, the church community also, just spreading the word. There are people out there that want to help, but they may not know how to help or what kind of help is out there. And not everyone has the ability or resources to be a foster parent, but they might be able to be a CASA volunteer. So I think just when people work together to spread our mission, it helps, you know, even, I don't say even more so than the money, but it's just getting the word out there. And what I always tell groups of people when I talk to them is, this may not be for you. It is a pretty intense volunteer opportunity, but I guarantee you, you know somebody that is appropriate for it. So just tell other people about it.
Now, if someone does want to become a volunteer, like, how do they get the process started?
It's actually pretty simple. They can go on our website and get we have an online application that's filled out. Once that application's filled out, it gets triggered to our recruitment coordinator, who will reach out and schedule an interview. And then we do a training 2 to 3 times a year. And the training is primarily virtual. There is one session that's in person, but it is a certain amount of independent work that you do on your own online, and then weekly Zoom debrief sessions as a whole group. And so once you complete the training and get sworn in by the court, we would match you with a child. So obviously there are the things that you need with any organization. You have to pass the background check and you know, show that you have the time and ability to do this. But it's we don't require people to have prior experience with kids. You don't have to be a former educator. You don't have to have experience with the legal system. You just have to have the passion, desire, and the want to help a child.
Thank you so much, Ross, and hopefully people will see this interview and they'll say, you know what, I think that's the position for me, or I know somebody that maybe would be a really good advocate.
Thank you for the opportunity. I love talking about CASA.
Absolutely, and it shows. Now we're going to take a deeper dive into what CASA is all about, so stay with us. You don't want to miss it. Lisa Peters is the program coordinator here at CASA, and she joins us to tell us more about the wonderful work that they're doing right here in Harford County. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Now, what is the role of CASA in the child welfare system?
So CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate, and what that volunteer does is they meet with the child. They meet with all parties involved in the child's case, such as the caseworker, teachers, family members, caregivers, and then they provide an independent perspective to the court and make recommendations as to what they feel like is in the child's best interest.
Now, what makes their role different from others involved in a child's case?
So a CASA volunteer is just assigned to one child or one sibling group, whereas the social worker or the attorney may have a large caseload, and it allows that volunteer to really form a meaningful relationship with that child and get to know them and find out what their needs are and make sure those needs are being met.
What ages of children do your volunteers work with?
So we work from infancy, birth, up through the age of 21 when they would age out of foster care. And every child is different, every case is different, and their needs are going to be different based on the stage of life they're in. And we try to match up our volunteers with what their strengths are and what that child needs.
Now, from your vantage point, what qualities make someone an effective CASA volunteer, and what do you think surprises people the most about the experience?
So, someone who is compassionate, good listener, dedicated, makes them an effective CASA. They don't have to have any particular skill set. And I think what surprises them most is how impactful they can be and how much the court truly values what they have to say.
Now, why do you do this work and what keeps you motivated? Because it can be very challenging at times.
So I think that every child deserves to be heard and seen, and to have a safe, loving, permanent home. I think that it's important that every child has a supportive adult in their life. What keeps me motivated is I really am in awe of our volunteers. They give so much of their heart and their time. And I work with some really incredible people that just are doing such impactful work, and it's a joy to see the impact that they have on these children's lives.
Lisa, thank you so much. The work that you do here in Harford County is so important, and I don't think people realize how many children are in need out there in our community.
Well, thank you so much for being here and hearing us today.
Absolutely. You do wonderful work. And coming up next, we're going to find out more about how to advocate for a child in foster care to help meet their needs. I'm joined by Janine Lamont. She is an advocate supervisor here at CASA, and she's here to tell us all about this wonderful organization and how they can advocate for our children who need it so desperately. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, Christy. Thank you.
So Janine, what is the role of an advocate supervisor, and what type of support do you provide to your volunteers?
Sure. So we initially meet with our advocates, and we introduce them to the case that we are asking them to take on. We go through the case, we talk about who they would need to contact and what roles they would play in this child's life. So that is the first thing that we do. And then we typically monitor the case, and we're there to assist them with anything they need along the way. It could be helping them reach out to resources, or helping them to connect with their child, or writing a report, anything like that.
Now, looking at the volunteers and the cases, the ones that you have supervised, what kind of positive aspects does CASA bring to a case?
I think the most important thing is that this child has one person that is on their side. Not to say that others aren't, but this advocate then is only looking at this child and the things that they can do to help this child. Where other people like the DSS workers, they look at the whole picture. Where the CASA, all they have to do is worry about advocating for them. And that means, maybe when they stand up in court and they talk about, like maybe they need therapy, or maybe they need to, maybe they need some help with their education. They might need a tutor. They might need different avenues or different resources. Then that advocate can speak on behalf of that child.
Can you share a specific example or a story about how a CASA volunteer provided a positive outcome for a child?
Sure. I have a case right now where she's a wonderful advocate for this child, and he was in a home that didn't quite work out for him. So then they were moving him to another home, which has turned out to be wonderful. But because along the way with these children, so many things change. Right. So the workers change, sometimes the placements change, therapists change, but the CASA is that one constant. So she was able to help him adjust to this new home, and there was still one person that he was familiar with that then helped him along the way. He was, she would say he was very clingy to her, and that was, she was there to reassure him that everything was going to be okay.
Oh, absolutely, and we need that. So that kind of brings me to the question, how important is the collaboration between CASA and the other members of the child welfare team, like social workers, attorneys, and the courts?
Sure. So it's extremely important. The social worker might have 20 to 30 cases on her plate, where a CASA advocate or volunteer only has one case. So they can be those extra eyes and ears. They see them sometimes more often than the workers. So they are able to communicate back and forth. If they go into a visit and they see something that they might need assistance with, or the child might need assistance with, then they can communicate with the worker and say, hey, I think we might need to do something about this. Same thing with attorneys. Attorneys don't always see them on a regular basis. They'll see them before court. So now they have the communication with the attorneys to say, hey, something is wrong or something might need assistance.
This is a very intense volunteer position. So what do you see as the motivation behind why people get involved, why they continue to do the work, and why they feel advocating for a child is so important?
I think the most challenging thing for this work is that it isn't something that you just you go plant flowers and then you leave at the end of the day and your work is done. So you take this to heart, you take it home with you every single day. So when this child is struggling, sometimes these advocates are struggling too because they feel that, and it's that passion. I think the most rewarding thing is when you see the success of a child and you know that you have been a part of that as well. And we have several CASAs who have children who have aged out of the system, but they still talk to them, and they still remember them, and they still value them.
Thank you so much for all you do, and we are so lucky to have people like you in our corner.
Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Now, what are the biggest concerns that youth face when they age out of foster care? We'll address that next. Scott Bradley is with me now. He is an advocate supervisor primarily for teens, and you would be surprised at the number of teens that we have in foster care right here in Harford County, and we're lucky to have people like him to advocate for them. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now, I understand that you supervise the volunteers that work specifically with teens. There's a lot of teens out there that need help and guidance. What unique challenges do they face?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that the biggest barrier for them is the constant change of people in their life. So more times than not, if they're in the system and they're a teenager, they've been in care for a while, which means high turnover of social workers, attorneys, changement of placements, group homes, families that they're a part with. That's where CASA can really come in and help these kids out and remain a one constant for them. And another one would be just the emotional damage that comes with each move. So each move is a traumatic experience for them. And you have to kind of remember, if they're a teenager, they've been doing constant change throughout their life in care. So it just really does add up to different amounts of emotional damage, psychological damage, insecurity, unknown of what's coming next. So you could be getting comfortable in a placement and they kind of are almost always thinking around the corner, when's this next person going to drop out? When's this next placement going to change? And that's extremely difficult as they get older, and it just kind of builds up and almost builds the scar tissue of just that emotional damage for sure.
Oh, so that's why it's so important for them to have a consistent supportive adult in their lives?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, as youth approach adulthood and they age out of the foster care system, what are some of the biggest concerns that they face?
Oh my goodness. I mean, any sort of independent living skills, so especially in today's world where it's becoming more and more difficult to obtain housing, obtain jobs. Most of the time, for me, for instance, when I was 18, 21, I had the examples of my parents, I had example of cousins, uncles, people who I got to see do it. I got to kind of make some memory points about that. Whereas these kids that are in the care, they might be from one, like I said earlier, one foster family to another, and it's inconsistent of how they do it. So they just don't know how to, change the laundry, run the dishwasher, pay the bills, make a budget. There's just things to them that are a little bit more foreign than it would be for someone who's lived in a stable housing and stable family environment.
And are those some of the things that a volunteer at CASA does to help?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, obviously, we're there to advocate for them in the court system, but those visits can be really looking over a budget, creating a fake budget to kind of say, this is how money moves, this is where you need to go, this is the percentage you need to give the bills, this is how much you should save. It really creates an opportunity where, the workers, social workers are looking for resources to give to these kids, to give them the best opportunities to gain that independence, but the CASA worker can really kind of come in and really build those independent living skills, show them how a dishwasher works, show them how to just manage bills and finances. And so the CASA worker can really come in and make that big impact for them, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And if a teen in foster care, let's say they could speak directly to our community, what do you think they would want people to understand?
That's a great question. I don't want to speak for those kids in our system, but I would say from just looking from my experience of advocating with the CASA volunteers is they're more than what their labels are. So they're not a foster kid. They're a kid that has potential. They're a kid that can do these things that I think, especially in Harford County, we hear foster kid and there's a lot of pity to it instead of action and empathy. And how can we, what are the things that we can do to help them along the way to build their skills and to build their, their potential out to be the most fully capable living adult out in our community as possible. In a lot of cases, these kids slip through the cracks. They lose their funding, they lose their resources, and they're kind of just expected to go out and do it and expect to kind of know everything. And so what it's great to see is when the CASA volunteers are done with their case, they age out and they're able to be with them after their case is closed. And you really get to see them kind of like bloom into the young adult that I believe that they're always supposed to be.
Thank you so much, Scott. And as you said, there's so many kids that could really use someone in their corner, and that's where wonderful CASA volunteers and advocates like you come in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming out.
Absolutely. Now, how are the volunteers appointed, and what does advocacy look like on a day-to-day basis? We'll find that out next. Diane Pearson is a CASA volunteer, and I got the opportunity to speak to her off camera. One of the most passionate people that you will ever meet, and she is so dedicated to her work and such a great advocate for children. We need more of them. And Diane is here to tell us more about why you should volunteer and why she continues to do so. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Now, Diane, how long have you been a CASA volunteer, and really what inspired you to become an advocate? Because as you've told me, you really enjoy what you do and you make a difference.
I've been a guardian ad litem CASA volunteer for just over 7.5 years. After I retired, I was looking for volunteer opportunities, and I attended a recruiting session at the library, and it just resonated to me. My parents were foster parents. At the time, there was no CASA organization, and looking back, I really think it would have benefited my sister as well as my family. So it was just something that I felt I could do and that I needed to do.
Well, what did you think the role would be like, and what kind of surprised you the most about it?
Training is wonderful. It's very detailed. So it's not like you're not trained on all aspects, but of course you never know what a role or responsibility is going to be till you do it. So I think you kind of go in thinking that it's going to be a visit with a child and maybe take them shopping if they're old enough, bring them a toy, chat with the foster parents, things like that. But what surprised me is how much I've learned on so many levels about the impacts to the family dynamic which has caused the child to go into foster care, and the many things that we do behind the scenes beyond the visit.
Many people don't understand that CASA volunteers are actually appointed by judges. So what does it feel like to have your recommendations and concerns addressed in court?
It's actually pretty awesome. The first time I had to give testimony, I have to say it was a bit daunting, but the magistrate reads your report every time you go to trial, or there's, the case comes before him. He will ask questions. He will ask for your observations or if you have any further comments. Personally, I've actually had a magistrate stop a discussion between the state's attorney and the family parents' attorney and say, we're going to ask Ms. Pearson because I know she'll be unbiased in her response. So it's actually pretty awesome.
So why does one caring adult matter so much? And what really makes you keep doing this?
The one person is the person, the CASA is the person whose focus is the child. There are many moving parts to a child in foster care, social workers, the courts, lawyers, family members, but the CASA's focus is on the needs of that child, that child is thriving, that it has a sense of normalcy, and again, as I said, even just seeing a doctor. Why do I keep doing this? I have the pleasure of doing this for a number of years, that I continue to get updates from prior families of how their children are doing and thriving. and it's just something that I just need to continue.
Thank you so much, Diane, for all that you've done. And it's so great for our children to have people like you in their corner.
Thank you for giving us the time to tell our story.
Absolutely. Now, we've heard from Diane, and coming up next, we're going to speak to another volunteer about his experience and why he continues to work for CASA, and his opinion on why maybe you should think about volunteering as well. Eric Nitsch is a CASA volunteer. He's here to tell us about his experience, how long he's been doing it, why he continues to do it, and maybe some points on why it would be beneficial for our Harford County community to come out and help this wonderful organization. Hi, Eric.
Hello.
What does it mean to be a consistent adult, as you are, in a child's life? What does it mean to them, and what does it mean to you?
Well, it means that the child isn't alone. So if you are going to schedule an event with them, keeping your word and showing up to the event shows that someone cares about them, they're not in it alone, and it begins to model behaviors for them, like trustworthiness that sometimes maybe they haven't seen much of.
Oh, absolutely. So what does a typical visit with a CASA child look like?
So in my particular case, my child started in a facility called St. Vincent's Villa in Baltimore County. So the visits began in a visiting room there were some toys around, and I would bring in some food from the outside. And as things progressed and we got to know each other more, we would go off campus and go out, and sometimes we'd go to the library or a skate park, or we even just would grab a pizza and sit in the back of my truck and watch the cars that go by and pick which one we liked better, that kind of thing. And then finally, once he was housed with a family member, we had more time, so we could even go hiking or mini golf, things like that.
I know that you really bond with these children, but what do you do to make sure that a child's voice is heard in the court systems?
Well, fortunately, in my case, there wasn't any stumbling blocks in the way. Everybody was kind of rowing in the same direction. So the opportunity to provide the magistrate with our report was the best way to bring the child's voice into the CASA process. It was some of the good, some of the bad, but it was really an opportunity for me to be a voice for the child in the process.
Now, can you describe a moment that reminded you, this is why I became a CASA volunteer?
I can. So my boy was, he got in trouble at school, as I did once upon a time, and others do.
Me too.
And so he was telling a story that did not line up with how the teacher and the other children involved were telling the story. And he told his teacher it didn't happen that way. He told his family member that it didn't happen that way. And when I picked him up and we went for a visit, he told me it didn't happen that way. And I've heard a couple of lies in my life, so I kind of detected that maybe he wasn't telling the whole story. And so I said to him, listen, I understand why you would lie to your teacher. You didn't want to get in trouble, and why you would lie to your guardian. You didn't want to get in trouble, but you're not going to get in trouble with me. I'm here to help you make better decisions. And I asked again, and eventually he told me the story, and as it turned out, maybe not everybody was as innocent. The other children were as innocent as they made out. And so when I dropped him off that day, I was really thinking, like, out of all the people, I'm the only one that he trusted enough to tell the truth to. And that really struck me as profound.
There are many ways to support your giving needs. You can make a difference. So if you would like to help CASA and advocate for a child that has been abused or neglected, you can visit them at casaofharfordcounty.org. Get involved, make a difference, be a volunteer, and make sure every child's voice is heard. I'm Christy Breslin. We'll see you next month on Harford MagaScene.